For decades, Mexico was the top producer of marijuana for the North American market, but with the introduction of medical cannabis and recreational use of marijuana laws, now the farmers in Mexico are hurting so much that they are deciding to change crops, Nick. And this is a historical shift, and it only obeys to the free market. The fact that in the United States has been able to not only accept marijuana use as a common thing, more than half of the population of the United States believes that marijuana should be legal. The betterment in quality of the weed, the amount of THC that the hydroponic way of growing weed has allowed, pretty much phase out the Mexican brick weed that was the standard back in the 60s, 70s, up to the 80s, where the cartels in Mexico had the control of the trade of marijuana. But now that better marijuana is being sold at better qualities, and you don't have to engage in any way whatsoever with a criminal endeavor, you can fully legally consume marijuana of better quality. What's the point of keep producing and shipping this marijuana up north?
Okay, at first glance, it's like, okay, legalization of marijuana, or at least acceptance of marijuana recreationally or medically, has benefits in other countries as well, because we see less growing of marijuana now in Mexico. But that doesn't mean that problem's gone now. So farmers are going to switch to growing other things, right? Harder drugs. You know, just the other day, I think it was New Hampshire that just started giving out medical marijuana cards as well. So I mean, it's this trend that we're seeing in the U.S. clearly not stopping, and I believe Mexico is actually even flirting with the idea now. Well, maybe not flirting with the idea, but that the idea of legalizing has definitely taken a little bit of a ramping up in the past few days.
There's already legal precedent for the legalization of weed in Mexico. In Colombia was legalized in the medical use. So we know that these two hubs of drug trafficking in Latin America, they're shifting their laws because they took the cue from the United States that legalized marijuana, and they saw the shift. But now, not everything is gold and dandy. Now we see that the farmers are saying, well, what we do see is that now in the United States, heroin is in high demand as a consequence of the abuse of painkillers, pharmaceutical painkillers, mainly Oxycontin. And so they get addicted, they go to the streets, they try to find cheap heroin, and now they're figuring out down in Mexico that a better crop to grow is poppy seeds. So they are shifting into that, which in itself it's another problem, a bigger problem, because it's still far from being a legal endeavor and is very profitable. The more illegal it is, the more profitable, and with the spike of addiction here in the States, it's a fertile ground.
Right, well, it's definitely a good thing for pot smokers here in the U.S. I mean, not only is it basically legal, I mean, it's much cheaper now, the quality is much better, it gets you way higher, and you have much more of a variety, right? When you go into the dispensaries, you have like a whole wall full to choose from. But at the same time, it's like you said, it's so complicated because, okay, Oxycontin leads to this leads to that, legalization of marijuana here leads to, you know, increase of growing of poppy seeds in Mexico. So everything is related, but in a very indirect way, and it's a very complicated thing. So that's why this war on drugs is something that there's clearly no end in sight, at least for the time being. So it's like, okay, so we legalize marijuana. We see the rate of marijuana being trafficked from Mexico drops. What, we can't now do the same thing with cocaine and meth and everything. So it's like, what do you do now? Like, what's the next step now that we see that this is a clear benefit?
Well, for the cartels, they are taking two. The one that we already talked, changing crops into poppy seeds, but also they're trying to compete with the level of quality of the marijuana in the United States by growing hydroponic crops. But it's not cost effective because here in the United States, you can legally grow them. Not only you can grow them legally, you can grow them better with a better quality, more THC content. Now, just to give you an idea, from 2013 to 2014, which we have the numbers, the legal market grew from $1.5 billion to $2.7 billion. Wow. Money that was taken away from the black market into the legal market, money that is being translated into taxes in the case of Colorado, but in the case of the government in Mexico, they've seen the decrease also in the border and in the crop destruction, because in Mexico, just this year, they were able to eradicate only 12,000 acres of marijuana crops compared to the 44,000 acres of last year. The same thing is happening at the border, where they're seeing about a third of the amount of marijuana seized at the border. So we know by these numbers that it's a reality that in Mexico, they're farming less and less marijuana because it's not a business. And I think this is one of those positive aspects of a conscious, legal way of consuming marijuana, cutting out from the equation the black market.